Hello and welcome to the Retail Journey Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Charles Greathouse.
And I'm James Harris, and today we are talking with Kaylynn Jordan, the founder of Ethical Sourcing Network and Global Purpose. Welcome, Kaylynn.
Well, thank you. It is awesome to be with you guys and just chat for a while.
Absolutely.
Yeah, looking forward to it. I mean, the retail journey is non-linear, and it's not a journey any of us should have to go on our own. But I think you're the furthest upstream the retail journey that I think we've talked to.
Absolutely.
I'm excited to talk about it. Like,
Yeah.
let's get into those upstream things that happen on the journey to retail.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about it.
Yeah, let's maybe start just with what Ethical Sourcing Network is and take it from there.
Yeah, so Ethical Sourcing Network. I launched Ethical Sourcing Network. I'm going to refer to it as ESN from this
There you
point.
go.
I like
have
it.
over time realized that the shorter, the sweeter, the better. So ESN, we launched at the beginning of 2013, specifically with our focus on manufacturing out of India. So for the past years, I have been connecting manufacturing to retailers and brands.
Yeah.
Awesome. So what, tell us a little bit about your story. How did you get into it? Why do you spend a third of your life in India? Like, what's the heart and the mission of what you're doing?
Yeah, my mom and my family, they ask me that all the time, a third of your life. Well, it really came from a passion of people and started with fair trade in mind. So I came in looking at international trade and looking at the whole stamp of fair trade and what does it mean. Yeah. And
So 2013, you said, right?
It actually began in 2008.
That's pretty early in the
Yeah.
life cycle of fair trade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I
It
mean,
was like when it started
so
to
as
roll.
it was really beginning to evolve out, and it was this really valuable stamp that had the meaning to people about fair trade, and then a whole lot of things happened around the world, and whether it was fires in manufacturing or women in manufacturing or all kinds of things that came into play, and it also the consumer began to ask, like, what does that mean?
Right.
So I also began to ask that question, like, what does it mean? And through the process, I decided that I really wanted to understand it from a firsthand experience.
Yeah.
And I took about 2 years and journeyed to India and just started going in and taking a look at manufacturing.
And did you have any background in India at the time, or that was your first voyage?
It's a really strange story, and I mean, at some point, maybe there's a place downtown we can all meet, and I'll give you the whole scoop of how that happened, because we would take the whole time and we wouldn't get into what you guys probably want to know from a sourcing perspective. But I'm happy to share that story. But it was kind of a launching point of I really felt that I needed to be in India, that there was something happening there, and I wanted to be a part of it early. And I am so happy that I did, because what I have done now from that point of just saying, India, people matter. There's a supply chain. There are workers. They all need a voice, whether they're informal, whether they're formal. How do we give voice to workers? And so I launched from that perspective of how do we begin to see what manufacturing's happen. So my company launched from a people first perspective. And as that happened, I decided, we need to build on that. People are people, right, everywhere, but they need to be supported as they go along their journey. So it's the same in manufacturing. You have a group of people who are manufacturing, and then they need really good processes and things that make them successful and connections to buyers. And then from that, you have this amazing product that then gets to us in our homes. And so I've just evolved from
Retail journey.
Yes.
It just happened.
And so it just evolved over time of where now we, work with some really large retailers to help them as their sourcing office. And we're really proud of the things that we get to do there, as well as brands also, and then connect amazing manufacturers to people like you as well, who help get them and work within the Walmart system.
Yeah, so obviously you work with your own clients that's, more India facing, and maybe they take over sales or whatever when it comes stateside. And now we've formed a partnership where we find opportunities, you connect it to the right factory, you walk them through the process of doing it safely, well, and with quality in mind, and then we take it from there once it reaches the U.S.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, and I mean, as a merchant, most of that stuff in a direct import business, you start getting into a lot of the spec decision making, but you're not typically sourcing, right? All of my experience was at Walmart, so there's a sourcing office, and they're the ones that tend to do most of that work, and they're not always going to see the whole picture. And as a merchant, I can't see the whole picture. So if you could share a little bit of like your experience, and I think there's a lot of nuance in the transition from there's not been a lot insourced from India to the U.S., at least proportionally to others.
Right.
Yeah.
And the journey from like, hey, in 2013 when you started, there probably wasn't even much momentum in that direction.
No.
And now there seems to be a lot of momentum.
No, one of the biggest obstacles that I have, or that I have worked on, and I'm seeing a real evolution and change by the manufacturers. But there was a little bit of a buffer that was built around India manufacturers. Right now there's a real push to get direct import because we want the efficiencies, we want the cost savings. To be able to have that, but we still need them to perform, right? I mean, they have to get the right product in that hits the quality, hits the specs. All
Right.
red is red is red, right?
Yep.
It's kind of like it can't be some strange red. So what I have seen is that there's been a evolution in the definition of between, as a manufacturer goes from working with an importer, which has been the way it was done a lot in India. They had this little insulation of having an importer around them who, would go out and sort, work as a design group and curate, and then find little factories, and then it would come in under their brand, or it'd be shifted through them and then go to the retailer.
Right.
But we all know the importance, if India is going to be successful and be able to scale like others in the world, that they need to be able to stand on their own,
go
and that
direct.
the retailer needs to be able to trust that they can do that. So my role and what I do is very early in the process of helping those manufacturers be equipped and ready to be able to work without adding anything into the costing of that. So instead of it then being maybe a certain large percentage that the importer says, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to put this into my cost of goods and it's cost retailer this, we're saying, how do we get these manufacturers ready at a nominal cost, at a low cost, where they say, you know what, I can pass that on to the retailer, and it doesn't really add any cost. There's efficiencies.
It's a value add, not a cost add.
Yes.
When it seems like a direct relationship with a manufacturer is very different than I'm working with an importer who's working with lots of different manufacturers, especially in the Walmart environment where there's enormous scale that's possible.
Yeah, I think the thing that I have run into as we work with larger retailers who are trying to do the hard thing of diversifying their supply chain and having options, right?
Yeah.
Is a lot of times they'll say, okay, I have this widget, or I have this that I want you to go. Sourcing team, can you go and have somebody make it in these 3 manufacturing areas, okay, parts of the world? And so it comes in, and it's been made in one area for like 20 years, right? It's been over and over made. And all of a sudden you say it comes to a new area, and it's like, okay, what are the obstacles to having this made now in a new environment?
Yeah.
How do we get them there? So there's a little bit of an education process sometimes that has to occur of what's important to you. I mean, for us to get the cost effectiveness or the efficiencies, we've got to make sure the raw materials are there, right? We got to make sure the equipment's in place so that you get the product. Sometimes it might look a little different. Usually it looks the same, but it sometimes might have a different manufacturing process to get to the same. And it's just you have to be able to walk that journey with them. And since we know that there's a very aggressive number that's been thrown out there of manufacturing out of India, right? I
Right.
mean, it's a big number. It's like we're going to have to be able to move some things from other places into that arena. So it's walking with those manufacturers saying, you already have the capabilities, you already have the capacity. Maybe you need this tiny little piece of machinery. It's not a big cap expense, but you could do this and use what you already have and go gangbusters
Right.
and be really successful.
What are the big opportunities that you're working on that you're excited about?
You know, I think from my background, there's a couple of things. One is not only the growth of a manufacturer who actually takes the raw materials in and makes it, but I'm seeing the actual base of that supply chain. Like like if we're talking about fabrics or textiles, we are seeing the mills begin to do a wider range of products, things that can compete with the fabrics, the performance fabrics, or the luxe fabrics, or the
Right.
plush fabrics that people really didn't think could come from India are now. They're now coming
exciting
there.
coming from
yeah,
India.
it's
Yeah.
super exciting. And so like I said,
It's
you're
a
just
huge
seeing
market.
them, and that was not happening 10 years ago. I've seen it evolve into 5 years, and now it's almost like I'm seeing exponential growth in the
Yeah.
way that they're maturing and investing.
Excellent.
That feels like the beginning of a hockey stick.
Yeah.
You know, because once you've got that core like foundation, then you can start hitting quality specs, hitting consistency. It's hard to justify it without the demand, and now there's been some stakes in the ground placed and movement, and to me that's very exciting for the journey ahead. My goodness.
Well, and success begets success.
Yeah.
So you start selling to a new country, a new retailer. Cash infusion comes from that. You're able to then add another line, hire more people, develop new products, and then each generation of success brings its own opportunities.
Yeah, there's even, I mean, from the financing side, you kind of touched on it. I'm seeing increasingly Indian business owners wanting to invest in Indian manufacturing. So, they want to see them successful. I'm finding manufacturers who used to say, I don't know if I can do that, who now have access to capital or to funds to say, okay, we can do that and we can do it now.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it, but now I can do it. Or I can go, get this new facility, this new factory, so we can scale as quickly as someone like a Walmart wants them to scale.
Yeah.
So it's been really exciting from that standpoint.
Excellent. So that's happening now. What about where is India 3 years from now? When we've seen some of the numbers, many retailers are putting some aggressive ones out there. Maybe at that point 50, 60, 70 billion incremental dollars coming out of India for the US. What is that? How does that look? Is it more of what's coming now? Is it new product categories? What are
Yes,
you
yes, and
seeing on
yes.
the horizon?
What I am seeing on the horizon is I'm going to do it in two things. So I see these generational legacy manufacturers who are investing in expanding their footprint, investing still in their people, looking at their current production and what they do and saying, okay, how do I not necessarily become more automated, but how do I put in better lines so that things can be fully integrated and I don't have to go and take it over to here or bring a box
Right.
from here. It's like everything's coming in and you're seeing it lining up and they can do it from mold making in house to
Sounds like a
just
Six
all those,
Sigma
yeah,
sort of.
all the whole Six Sigma. In fact, I've actually had 3 factories recently who said, "Oh, we're doing Six Sigma." I'm going, really?
Excellent.
It's excellent to see them thinking in processes because I know that the quality will follow as they do that, and that they will be more profitable and
Right.
have more opportunity because they're setting those things up. So I think that when you look at that legacy kind of generational, I'm seeing that. The other thing that I'm seeing is them looking at what their other global, the other countries are doing. What have they done from an equipment standpoint? What do we not have that we
Yeah.
need to do to be able to grow?
Infrastructure.
Infrastructure. And so recently I had a manufacturer who had just invested $20 million into a really amazing, some spot welding that will just totally blow up their capabilities of being able to do, like bath items, caddies, any kind of cages that might be done, those types of things that have high testing needs as well for performance. And it's already a material that they were strong in, that India is known for. It's like a steel and iron and metal material. So they're known for that. They just needed to put the right equipment in. And now, you know what? Sky's the limit of what they can do.
Yeah, that's exciting. What else? Like what...
I mean, I think about it as a merchant who's been either given a goal or the task. There are some things that come up that are like, hey, this is intuitive, very easy. I know what to do. I don't have any issues. Direct import, it's like, man, I see lots of systems that are in place, and I've got this sourcing team that's my right hand that's in Shenzhen, and I'm used to working with them, and I have no problem understanding how things operate. I know there's lots of teams forming on the Walmart side, and we're not with Walmart. We don't represent Walmart in any way, shape, or form. But as I think about the merchant mindset, trying to think through, okay, now there's this other draw. What are the things that you see as like, hey, watch for this. Here's some good questions to ask as you go down that journey from a readiness standpoint, because merchants don't typically get to have dual path solutions, where things are getting bet on and like, all right, this is going to happen over here. And it's at least half the country is going to do one or the other, or whole programs shift over, and all that represents a certain amount of risk. So as you think about stewarding that and all of your experience actually on the ground, like what are some of those questions?
Well, I think that language is, and when I say language, it's not that they don't speak English, because remember, they had a British rule for a while, and so the business language is English. I'm talking about language of just those nuances of understanding each other from that point of view of what that is. There's recently, I love to say the story of, I'll never forget talking and being in one of my early meetings, and we were talking about an issue, a problem that I was seeing, and I said, and I'm afraid that's just the tip of the iceberg. And they all looked at me, like cocked their head at me, and I was like, oh, you know what? I have never had ice in India. And they probably really hadn't seen an iceberg in the way that we do. Yeah. And I thought,
not a common analogy.
It's not a common analogy. So I actually reflect to that a lot when I go in. Is like, okay, what is the common language? How do I improve communication? How do we phrase it in a way that they can understand it? The hard thing from a merchant standpoint is, am I giving clear specs? Do they have the direction they need to be able to make the right decision, not only from a product development standpoint, but also from a profitability? Because all stakeholders want to be successful. They want to be successful as well. And am I setting them up? I have been very encouraged with the way that Walmart is approaching what I've seen some of the manufacturers, especially new manufacturers in India, of saying, we're going to walk. Like, let's try one or two items. And then you know what? Next year, I'm going to try to double or triple that. And then we go in the next 3 years. So I have actually been a lot of respect for what I am seeing, the mindset of doing, like, how do we do that? I think the challenge is getting those big items, those big moves or shifts of how do we get those in play. And that does take some investment from the India manufacturer to maybe identify, is there a category I haven't thought about that I could do that could allow that merchant to have a bigger spend or make a bigger shift.
And those early bets, they kind of have to be home runs. And I don't mean just from performance and delivery and all, but it has to sell. Because if you've got one or two items and you're wanting to see success in order to get to 10 and then 30, those two items have to work.
The initial launching point has to be successful.
Choosing the right item is really probably critical to that.
Yeah, and I
process.
think it comes down to having a good your sourcing partners in your GS office, or for me, or in my case, if I'm in that role of, am I giving you the information that helps you understand truly not only what their capabilities or capacity are, but how does it look like in a really holistic way?
Yeah.
Is there equipment that could do something different? I think the unique perspective that I bring, or that I have a Western viewpoint. You
Right.
know, I shop in a Walmart. I shop in a, I know how it's used. The product is used. I know how that material, and because I work in manufacturing, I know that material can be used in a different way.
Right.
Or if there's just this done to it, then all of a sudden it has a new opportunity, a new life that can be done in the store.
There's really so many endless combinations in sourcing. You know, so you could change the fabric a bit here. You could this different stitch. There's so many things that you just really have to live in it in a way that, you know, I couldn't. I work with, you know, sales, merchandising, analytics. But that's just a whole new vast world.
Which is perfect, since
me,
we're working
anyway.
on it in tandem,
Yeah,
right? I
yeah.
love the fact that I can now say, okay, where do I take an amazing Indian manufacturer when I see them and help them be successful in Walmart? And I say, you know what, high impact? Oh my gosh, they're the team. They're who you want to work with.
Squad goals.
That's right.
So speaking to those high capacity, you've seen the secret sauce that makes a manufacturer be someone that's going to thrive. Let's say someone's listening today and they're in that manufacturing spot. All right, I think about trying to take on something like pursuing either U.S. expansion or specifically Walmart U.S. expansion. What's some of the key watch-outs or advice from your experience?
Well, first of all, and this is, if you know, it's we kind of met before we talked, so I know some questions that are coming. And one of them for me was my biggest learning, and I think this goes
Let's
to
jump to
this.
that.
No,
Story
my biggest
time.
learning,
Come on.
So my biggest learning is that you can't do things in isolation. You know, you have to surround yourself with experts. I mean, if you think that you as knowledgeable as you are, you have to always be a learner, and you have to always make sure that you surround yourself or have access to experts. And I think that there's a fear of doing it because, one, it's going to add cost, and you don't know what that cost is going to be as a manufacturer. So you kind of go, oh no, is this going
Right.
to cost me a ton of money, and then am I going to be able to make money in the end?
Yeah.
Or is it going to have results? You know, and so I think that that's their biggest, the biggest fear. I think that they really believe in their manufacturing, or because most of them are generational. They've been manufacturing as families forever.
They probably grew up in the factory.
Yeah,
way.
and so they're ready. I mean, they're ready to go. They're like, okay, I understand what I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you help me do it there?
And I've seen corporate cultures where partnering with others is second nature. And I've seen corporate cultures where there's no chance, we only do what we do. I think it's too difficult to speak in broad strokes, but you've probably experienced both.
I have, yeah.
Would you give some advice to those that, like, hey, they've grown up in that I use partners, and like we've got teams, and I bring on experts and folks. It's like, no, we do everything. I wear all the hats. And I'm really proud of it.
Yeah, I think we see it in both. The ones who really scale, though, are the ones who you see that they've either brought in an outside consultant. They're not afraid to hire a U.S. design group to come in and give them some guidance on design to make sure they're hitting that U.S. Because quite frankly, everything is fast. I mean, right? How fast are things moving?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, but you can't. But a manufacturing process still takes time. I mean, you're making something from scratch.
And when you start making it at scale, you then have it.
Yeah, and so
It better be the thing that's going to sell.
Right, you can't. Right, and you can't make a mistake, or it's costly for everybody.
Yeah.
So doing that up front from the beginning is like, what are they investing in? What are they not willing to invest in? I've seen manufacturers who have gone and wanted to go into Walmart and have amazing capabilities and that could do very well, but they don't want to invest in the people who can help them with their systems and talk to Walmart. They think they can just kind of do it in their own, and when they do, they make really important consequential
Yeah.
mistakes that
Consequential.
that don't only just affect their bottom line, but affect relationships and opportunity because they don't execute or bring in the expert from the beginning.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I love
That's
that.
good.
As a learning, that was probably not painless.
No, and it wasn't
to
for
learn.
anyone, it
Oh,
wasn't for
man.
anyone. And so, and it's someone just, and I'm going to use old terminology, so y'all forgive me, because I know there's like, what you have, retail link, illuminate, all this. But I mean, just not having someone who can like run the system and catch
Yeah.
those things that need to, so that things talk to each other.
Totally.
And think that they can hire someone who is good at IT or has went to a great school. It's not that they can't do it or learn it.
Right.
Yeah.
But at the beginning, you might need somebody to kind of come in and train and do it for you for a bit.
And working with retailer A doesn't necessarily translate to retailer B.
Oh, wow.
Absolutely. As
Preach.
someone who works from across multiple retailers, from a sourcing perspective, everyone has their own systems, their own acronyms, their own
Yep.
processes,
Yep.
their own timelines, their own trend boards. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean we're very focused on Walmart and Sam's Club
Yeah.
here in Bentonville, and Walmart and Sam's Club are not the same.
Yeah.
They're the same, Walmart Inc., but they are not the same.
Yeah.
So lots of different acronyms and approaches and
Yeah. I mean,
totally.
don't even get me started with the P-BOP. So,
Yeah.
One of the things I wanted to get to today, the businesses, systems, lines, scaling, all critical and important, but what are some of the human stories? Like, what have you seen from your 12 years in India, human impact wise? Like,
Oh,
what
gosh.
does this development mean to the people that are doing the work?
well, we know that it's now the most populous place in the whole world, right? So there's more people there that need work than anywhere else in the whole world. So the jobs mean something for one thing. I think for me, there's I've been on a little bit of a journey myself. So I started in fair trade. So when I was in fair trade, I would see small artisan groups. I might find myself in a village that does nothing but make bone frames, right? Like cut little pieces of bone and mosaic them into frames. When you see that and you see the hands that touch a product at that level that's it ends up at a TJ Maxx or a World Market, you go, I can't believe that came from that tiny little village. And when you're there and you see it happening and you see that what it provides is education for children, it provides opportunity for women that wouldn't have it. It totally transformed my worldview when I saw that. And
Yeah,
so
I
from
bet.
that point forward, I knew that I was going to be in and out of India and that I wanted to understand it from the supply chain, from the base of what I call the base or foundation of the pyramid all the way up, and have view into it. So that happened there. What I see today with the larger manufacturers, which I find incredibly encouraging, is I remember when Walmart launched their Women in Manufacturing initiative, and it was great. I mean, there were so many cool things that were done, and the advancement that has happened because of the investment that Walmart made. I don't think that probably Walmart realizes that it continues, that it motivated other retailers to do it.
Right.
It motivated that they're doing things today. It motivated, it set precedent for manufacturers who they kept those in place. They kept
Totally.
those things in place that never went away. And so I see that in what I'm seeing is the evolving of manufacturing. So you might see that there is a training center that you never would have seen before. And that training center might be for tailors. And you go, well, we see a lot of here of women or it's it can be gender neutral of who's doing that. In India, it wasn't. I mean, it was something that men did. They were the tailors. That's what happened. Now we're seeing just in a total, women manufacturers where it's almost, a high percentage of women in that job. It's because the manufacturers are setting up training centers.
Right.
And they train people so that they can get the new equipment. I mean, they're even more important now because they bring new equipment in. And so when they bring in someone, not only are they training them at a basic, but they're training them on something that maybe even if they did sew or was a tailor, they had never seen this type of equipment.
Right.
Because they want the quality and they're investing in that type of thing. So we're seeing that as well as just the services they provide. Recently, I was in one of my favorite manufacturers that does, and they have a full-time nurse, so they make sure that their people are well cared for, and that they have the care they need. They invest in students, their workers' students, so that they have education. So there's just a constant giving to their people, and it's helping them grow and scale because they retain their people.
Right.
They don't have the turnover, and we all know for quality of product, that's a pretty important thing to have happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, should we go to the lightning round? You've already answered
I've answered
one.
some of them. I know. I'm sorry.
like
I
it.
jumped ahead. Let me see. I'm going to get my little list out so I know what I want to say because I was thinking, I don't know. Is it a lightning round if I planned it and I know what the questions are going to be?
Not technically, but
Not quite.
it's all
Okay,
right.
and I'm going to be really fast on
Yeah,
it.
just act surprised.
Okay, we go.
Out
Okay,
of
here we go.
nowhere.
Out of
Biggest
nowhere.
failure.
No. Okay. Yeah.
Talk to us about a big fail you've had in the journey of retail.
The journey of retail. Well, again, I think it was the fact that I didn't really, and I still struggled from a technical side for the .com of like, what do I need to do? Because I literally, my husband and my first date was to a grocery store and we walked the grocery aisles and we've never stopped walking
That's
retail
really funny.
aisles.
Yeah.
So it's like, there it is. I'm a retail geek. We love it. Both of us were in retail and
Yeah.
it's just kind of our sweet spot.
You called it the .com. So that,
Sorry.
it definitely.
I know.
It's putting off the vibe of like, I don't .com.
I don't comment.
Don't come. So I'll introduce you to the digital store walk. One of my favorite ways
Oh,
to.
I can't wait.
Yeah, because it's like I go on a store walk, but sometimes you can sit. You can walk if you'd like, but getting really into like what's the customer going to go through digitally. But yeah, I think a lot of
Will you
us.
teach me
We're
how
in
to
the, oh
do
yeah,
that?
we'll do some digital store walks.
I want to. I
Yeah.
want to because I'm a visual person, so I don't see enough when I'm looking at a storefront on digital.
Totally.
Right. And digital is a big opportunity for India.
Absolutely.
Furniture, high ticket items, those are very heavy e-com purchase.
Yeah.
So that's a big
Yeah,
opportunity.
big manufacturing.
It was very important from what I've heard at the open call or at the summit. I mean, there was
totally.
huge push on it.
The open call. You're
The
referring
summit,
to the
the
one
India summit.
in India.
The India summit, yeah. And so
What was that like?
It was really, first of all, it was exciting. It was really amazing to see so many manufacturers in one place. And I ran into old friends that I hadn't, seen in years. And then, made some reconnections. And so it was amazing to see what they were doing. But for me, being someone who lives in Bentonville, and then being there and was just and loving India the way I do.
Yeah.
It was
really cool to see those worlds collide.
It was really cool to see my worlds collide.
I love it. One of my favorite parts of when I did work at Walmart, just the impact. And there's a heart in that company of like doing the right thing. There's a consistent theme of like we're trying to do the right thing. It's a really big company. There's lots of nooks and crannies and difficult things to go through, but stepping into like, hey, we're going to go do this, and then running an open call, starting to set up resources, setting up infrastructure.
Absolutely. And they're doing it well. And,
totally.
And they're communicating it really well to the manufacturers of setting realistic goals for them. How do you scale? Like I said, I've been really impressed coming out of that, of what I've seen from that perspective of setting them up of what is success, and here it is today, and what is it in 2 years, what is it in 3 years, and kind of pulling around. Okay,
you
that was not as lightning.
Not
was it?
lightning, that's fair, but a fun one and a fail is a tough question.
So what are you reading, watching, or listening to these days?
Well, this is a fun one for me. So my favorite thing is on Sundays is to read Maria Shriver's Sunday paper. It comes to my into my list. And she does, it's called Architects of Change. And so she pulls together thinkers, this is her thing, thinkers, leaders, and visionaries moving humanity forward. What I love about it, I'm not being lightning again.
Oh, no, it's great. We're here for it.
So what I love about it is that she deals with women's issues. She deals with parenting issues. She deals with global issues. And I just find her to be really thoughtful in who she brings into that. And then my other one is a new one that I've just started, and it's called 21 Hats. And it is curated by entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs. So as a business owner, as you're scaling, you're always learning, and you want to surround yourself. Sometimes you find yourself feeling like you're working in isolation.
Yeah.
And so it feels practical. It feels relevant for a business owner. So that's kind of the other one that I'm doing right now.
Oh, that's excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Kaylynn. This
Are
has
you
been
kidding?
a great conversation.
Super fun.
Super fun. You let me talk.
Yeah. Well, it's such an interesting topic, an interesting time. I mean, there's a, people talk about overnight success of like, oh, wow, it's amazing that you happen to be right there for, the push for India
the overnight
manufacturing.
Success that was 12 years
started
in the
in
making.
2008. Oh, okay. Yeah. Not exactly overnight.
Yeah.
And then starts with like the actual ground up. There's something so encouraging about the depth of integrity when it's like, no, we started at like the actual ground. And it's not like, oh no, I know this is a good group because of the one certification that they came with. Like, no, I've toured and we've talked about and we've processed which capabilities need to exist, new machines, like.
Yeah,
The depth there that all happens way before something hits an IDC is so critical. And there's areas of the planet where that's happened for years and has consistency. And India is a space where it's becoming anew. It's a really unique season.
Super exciting. And thank you for letting me kind of just tell a little sliver of it.
Yeah.
And I look forward as we work together, stories will just kind of ooze out and you'll be like, oh, I wish you'd told that one.
So do I. I'm looking forward to my first trip to India.
I can't wait to take you.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
And thank you all for joining us today. We'd love if you subscribe to the podcast or go to highimpactanalytics.com and you can watch or listen to any episode there. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.